And welcome back to Law and Society with Andrew Stevenson, criminal defense attorney right here in Lancaster. But your practice is not limited to just Lancaster. You've had cases all over the region, I believe.
Correct.
Athens,
Athens, Hocking County, Perry County.
Wherever there are people getting in trouble.
Yes.
Or doing things that they say, I didn't realize that was a crime.
Yes.
So I want to finish up on complicity here and then move on to the next segment. But I wanted to end with the UCLA experiment. What is that?
It's one of the experiments I talk about in my lecture, particularly about the importance of teenagers in being liked and how important the way they're perceived is, which contributes sometimes to the decisions they make to go along with things. There was an experiment done by UCLA University in which they showed groups of teenagers of photographs, and they were of somewhat innocuous things and somewhat risky things, things like drugs or alcohol, cars, drag racing. And then they had just innocuous pictures as well. And basically what they did was they asked the person whether or not they liked the picture. And they had two groups. The control group was just asked whether or not they liked the picture, and everyone gave their response. However, in the other group, they added a certain number of likes at the bottom of the picture. So they would say that people would think that 20 other people had already liked the picture.
A la Facebook.
A la Facebook. And what they found out is that people were more likely to like a photograph if others had already liked it before. The other thing that they realized, which was quite interesting, was that when they showed the images of risky behavior to teenagers, the prefrontal cortex region showed no activity. Now, the prefrontal cortex region is essentially that part of our brain which regulates our decision making. It's what makes us aware that what we're doing is going to be a bad choice and has negative consequences.
It's where the alarm bells go off.
Correct. That doesn't develop in human beings until the age of 25.
Okay.
So when your teenager says to you, I don't know, when you ask them, why did you do that? And they look at you with this look that says, I have no idea. They're not lying.
They're being honest.
They're being honest because their prefrontal cortex has not yet developed. So when you show images of risky behavior to teenagers, nothing goes on in that region.
This is why the best soldiers are 18 to 25.
And it's why rental car companies won't rent cars to anyone under 25.
Yeah.
Because the rental car companies got it right, believe it or not.
And that's why that magic age in young people generally is 25 for insurance rates and
everything
all of that.
Else. That's why.
That is amazing to me.
Yeah.
And you see, that's one of those facts that you say, well, it suddenly all makes sense.
It does start to make sense once
really
you understand.
Does. And there is that popularity thing that says, if other people like it, I should, it's got to be good, right?
Yeah, and then the same thing kind of happens with the bystander effect.
Well, let's get into the bystander effect, because it's intriguing and chilling to me at the same time. Andrew, we have a very, very famous case, 1964, Kitty Genovese.
Correct.
New York City, a woman was stabbed. She screamed.
She screamed repeatedly as she was being attacked.
In a large apartment building with, at that time, they counted up 37 people heard her screaming, 37
Correct.
witnesses, and nobody for 30 minutes did anything.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And they wondered why.
Yeah.
So there was some research done a few years later where they conducted an experiment in which they had participants come in who were supposed to fill out a questionnaire to see if they qualified for the experiment. Well, that actually was the experiment. And they did it in three separate groups. They brought in people by themselves and put them at a table and had them start filling out the questionnaire. Then they would start to pipe a little bit of smoke into the room. And when they did that, about 75% of the people who were alone would notify somebody that there's smoke coming into the room.
Right away.
Then they did it where they would put 3 people in the room together, all of whom were unaware of what was going on, and have them fill out the questionnaire. And when 3 people were in the room, they piped in the smoke, and only about 38% of the time would somebody say anything. Then they would put 1 person in the room with 2 people who were in on the experiment. And when the smoke started to come in, one of the people who was in on it would acknowledge it and say, oh, look, there's smoke, but do nothing. Only 10% of the time did the participant say anything. Which basically leads to the idea that the bystander phenomenon is that the greater the number of people that are present when there is a crisis or someone is in need of help, the less likely people are to assist.
Which is, I guess we say initially, I think, well, that's shocking, and then you start to realize it's human nature.
Element.
It's a human nature thing. That in a group, we're waiting for someone else.
You're waiting for somebody else to take
charge. And again, this is where I had this discussion with somebody about, strong-willed children become the leaders of our society, because you see this, the ones that are willing to step up, that 10% or less, they're generally the ones that are the take charge people in our society.
Everyone's always waiting for somebody else to do something.
There's a famous story about Donald Trump and a mugger. And when he was younger, basically seeing somebody get accosted on the street, and Donald Trump supposedly jumped in. I wonder if he was under 25 when he did that.
Now, if it's one person, if you're in need of assistance,
and it's one person, you are more likely,
to get assistance from that one person. And the reason that the research they gave was the first reason was just as you said, there's a diffusion of responsibility.
Yeah.
The more people that are there, you don't have to take action. When it's a one-on-one situation and the person's looking at you, there's nobody else you can pass the buck to.
So when you go back to the Kitty Genovese case and you say that diffusion of responsibility, 37 witnesses, does that mean each one is only 3% responsible?
No, it just meant that they thought somebody else.
Yeah,
they didn't have to.
And I'm
do
sure
so.
At some point somebody said, "Please help that woman. Somebody help." And that somebody it didn't occur to them that somebody was them.
The other thing that happens when you have a large group is that the fact that nobody else is doing anything becomes a social cue to you that maybe assistance isn't required, that maybe the appropriate course of action really is to do nothing. And what is interesting is that this is just the opposite of what happens with groups of teens, where one comes with an idea and everyone else kind of goes along, but yet at the same time, no one wants to be the one to stand up and say, this is a bad idea. Or
walk away from it and look uncool or unhip or whatever
so
the current term is.
So they are kind of somewhat connected. They also did a recent experiment, and this is kind of frightening, that they looked at all of the admissions to hospitals that involved public medical crises, a heart attack, choking, things along those lines. And they found that in only 2.5% of the cases did the person who required medical treatment, an ambulance to arrive, did somebody offer any type of assistance to this person, even though they were in public?
Let's talk about a situation where you're in trouble and there's a group.
Right.
I guess the advice is to, instead of saying help me generically, is to, Andrew, look
pick
at you
somebody
and pick
out.
somebody, right?
Yeah.
If you see me choking, I'm going to make eye contact with you and I'm going to say,
please help me.
Right. It's the best I can.
That's the best way. And there's also a belief that if you're aware of this phenomenon and you find yourself in that situation, then hopefully you would be one of the ones who would be more aware and step up and, in fact, do something.
You would think, armed with that knowledge, that in a group, that there's less likely to be someone step up if you're in a larger group and you see an emergency in front of you.
Right.
You need to be conscious that maybe that should be you.
Right. And the same thing if you're in a large group and somebody comes up with a really bad idea.
Right. You should the voice of reason.
The voice of reason. Even if your prefrontal cortex doesn't recognize it, you should speak up and do something.
And we've made some inroads in our society to this. And I think about designated drivers. And 25 years ago, you never heard of designated drivers.
Correct.
You're going to go out and have a night of fun. You're going to be drinking. And you never heard about, hey, someone needs to be the DD. Now it's as common as anything. I hear it from anywhere I go. If they say we're going out Friday night and Jane's going to be our DD.
Right.
I mean, we've made inroads into where we know there are lapses in judgment. We can take preventive measures to avert trouble. Think about all the DUIs that probably have been prevented by the designated driver.
And all the accidents.
Exactly, and the fatalities. So there are preventive things we can do to head off bystander effect if we're armed with that knowledge.
But unfortunately, what we're finding is now people are filming with their phones.
Let's get into the whole social media. Now it's like, hey, look, baby's drowning in a pool. Hey, let me pull my camera
out and record it.
We're all of a sudden, dispassionate reporters or what? Because this was the argument, there's always been the argument if you're a combat photographer, you're not a combatant. You're there to document the action. But at some point, if somebody, if somebody needs a bandage put on, you're a medic.
Right.
There are certain situations like that where, hey, okay, I'm the photographer, but now I'm the medic because this person needs life-saving measures. Where are we at with that in social? I mean, it just seems like we have a whole lot of people that are just filming the catastrophe, if you will.
People tend to become a society of observers and watching and commenting from afar. On social media has provided that outlet, and it's becoming the alarming trend, unfortunately.
And we've had this situation where, and I can't understand. You see something, a crime, and instead of taking it to the police, you put it on your Facebook page
Correct.
or your Instagram.
Or you film it.
Yeah, look. Yeah, well, you do. You take that evidence and
Right.
you put it on
Put it on
social media. And again, now, what is your complicity there? If you saw a crime and then didn't report it or put it on social,
Generally, there is a law that requires people to report felonies. I've never seen it enforced. I've never seen it charged, but it is on the books. But I guess there could be a situation where if somebody just filmed it and did nothing, that it may in fact come to light, and we could have that type of charge being prosecuted in the future.
I could open up. We're running out of time, but there's so many. When you talk about cameras and recording video, and we're under observation constantly now. Traffic cameras, police officers with body cameras, and to me, I want every police officer in this nation armed with a body camera.
I would like that too.
Number one, as the attorney, when they say they have undisputable video evidence, it either proves it's going to prove one way or the other.
Correct.
And when you have the more eyes, if you will, that record this, and I'm talking cameras, the less ambiguity you have, especially when it comes to, well, he assaulted me, or that was police brutality, or whatever it is. There's so many areas where it just takes the question out of it when you see the video.
It does, and generally I'm in favor of video in criminal cases as much as we can get, and I have found it tends to help my clients more than it hurts them.
Well, good point, because for you. There may be those out there that think, well, why would he want video evidence if he's trying to get his client the case dismissed? But as you said, many times it exonerates your
It exonerates, or it presents the facts in a slightly different light,
or it puts the responsibility. It shows who's truly, if there's multiple people involved, it can show mitigating circumstances. It can show that somebody did try to do the right thing.
Yep.
The more eyes, the better, I think.
I think so too.
But there's the social phenomenon of, hey, look, there's somebody in trouble. Let me film it.
Right.
Hold my beer. I need to film this. Come on. Hey, look, Jimmy's going to blow up. He's going to, whatever, with whatever bad thing, stop him first, I guess. Any final thoughts before we close up for today? This is, by the way,
if you think it's a bad idea, it is.
Yeah. This is number 9 on your top 10 list, by the way. We're not going in a particular order.
We're not going in a particular order.
Complicity. Yeah, what can get
failing to walk away. And if you think it's a bad idea, it is. And just don't do it.
At the point where you say, I just don't feel like spending the night in jail, walk away.
Yep.
Walk away. Andrew, as always, our time has flown, and this is just for me, this is a lot of fun, because I'm learning as I go here. You're just a wealth of knowledge. Again, StevensonCriminalDefense.com if you need help. If you find yourself in a situation.
If you have any question, just ask Andrew.
And again, if you want to hear this show again, just go to the wolfohio.com. It will be posted on our archives or at StevensonCriminalDefense.com. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, Mark.
This has been Law and Society on The Wolf.